Welcome back, friends, to another session of Delving Deeper with Rabbi Tiechtel. There's been a question that's been in my mind for a while. We all know that God split the sea for the Jewish people as they left Egypt. Yet, did you ever wonder why the Israelites had to pass through the Red Sea? If you look at a map of the Middle East, the actual route from Egypt to Israel is directly through the Sinai Desert. The sea is totally out of the way. Yet God led them on a detour, trapping them between the sea and the chasing Egyptians, and then split the sea. Does God have a sense of direction? Well, in describing the Exodus, the verse tells us that God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, which was close by, because God said the people might reconsider when they see the war and return to Egypt. So let me take them in an indirect way. And nevertheless, the Bible story is meant to provide us with a lesson to our personal lives. So here is how I understand the words of the sages on this. You see, the earth is comprised of the oceans and continents, sea and dry land. What's the difference between the two? On dry land, you get to see everything. It's all visible. The trees, the animals, the mountains, the people that occupy it. Everything is recognizable. On the sea, on the other hand, it's a big blue expanse of mystery. And though the sea is teeming with life, when you look at it, you can identify nothing because everything is hidden beneath the surface. So it is with us humans. Our personality has two layers, our sea and our land. What we know about ourselves, our visible strengths, our tested talents, our known abilities, the elements of our character that we all are aware of. And that comprises, I would say, the dry land of our personality. But below the surface of our character lies a vast sea of latent talents, inner strengths, and untapped abilities that we never knew we had. And in the depths of our soul lies a reserved, dormant energy waiting to be discovered. That is our sea, that even at times we ourselves are unaware of what lies inside. So the question is, how do I tap that potential reservoir? How can our sea become dry land? Well, friends, there's only one way. You need to encounter the Red Sea. You see, the Israelites had their back to the wall. The Egyptians were closing in on one side, a raging sea on the other side, threatening the Jews in the middle. And they had two options, despair or faith. Logic and reason demanded that they give in, because there was no possible way out of their predicament. But faith demanded that they keep marching to the promised land, sea or no sea. This is the path which God has led us. So we have to have faith and march on. And so they did. And friends, it was at that moment when hopelessness was countered by faith that the impossible happened. And the sea opened up and it became dry land. The most formidable obstacle dissolved into a nothingness without a struggle. One ingredient, faith. The people became empowered exactly when they acknowledged God as the only true power. By surrendering themselves to a higher force, they discovered the force within them, and they split their own sea. You see, the Jewish people are no strangers to times of challenge. At the very birth of our nation, we needed to learn how to face these challenges. So God, in his infinite wisdom, took us on a detour to the sea and opened it up for us. He was telling us all for all times, when you feel the world is closing in on you from all sides, don't despair. God is with you. Get up, move forward, take the first step, and he will split the sea for you. Let me share a story with you. This upcoming weekend marks 75 years since a historic event that changed the face of Judaism in the last generation. It would not be an exaggeration to state that Jewish life would have been entirely different had it not been for that event. 75 years ago this weekend, the Lubavitcher Rebbe became the Rebbe, the leader of the 7th generation of Chabad. And he declared that we must embark on a battle of momentum to spread Jewish light. But this style of battle is going to be with love, not with hatred. Deep down in the inner sea of our essence, we all aspire to be close to God. And it's our role to illuminate and to enhance that inner good that is inherent in each one of us to make the sea dry land. The Rebbe had a campaign called the 10 Mitzvot. People went out to the street and offered every taste of all of the commandments of the Torah, especially these 10. Thus, they invited others to celebrate Shabbat themselves, for a Shabbat meal, to encourage women to light Shabbat candles, and for they themselves to taste the wonderful, wonderful flavor of the rest and the holiness of Shabbos. And the Rebbe's method was that it's confident enough to break down walls and barriers and offer Judaism to every Jew. Allow them to taste the treasure that belongs to them. Reveal the sea, and it becomes dry land. I heard a story that took place 34 years ago near Daytona, Florida. Heard it from a Chabad rabbi about two young men, Rabbi Lipsker and Rabbi Grossman. They were on a long trip from Daytona to Miami. They were actually visiting prisoners in U.S. jails, lifting their hope, telling them God is with them even in a dark place. They were going back towards Miami after visiting a prison and lifting the spirits of several that are there. And they knew they had another 200 miles to get back home. Suddenly they noticed that the fuel gauge in the car was dropping. They desperately searched for a gas station, and they were afraid to think about the possibility of having to spend the night alone on the deserted highway they were traveling. At the last minute, friends, they found a small little gas station near Daytona, Florida. The attendant who filled their tank kept looking at these two rabbis with the yarmulke and their beards. And when they finished, the attendant said, "Would you be willing to come out of your car, come with me to the gas station office?" The young rabbis got a little nervous. They didn't really understand what's going on, but they agreed. They walked behind the gas station into a little office. They saw an old man sitting and staring. The attendant turned to the old man and said, "Dad, here they are. They came to take you." The boys were confused. They didn't know what to say. The old man said, "Young men, where are you from?" And they said, "Oh, we're young Chabad rabbis in training. We came to visit some lonely Jewish prisoner. Came to put him on tefillin, lift his spirits, let him know that he's not alone." The stunned old man burst into tears, and he said, "Young men, please sit down." And he shared with them an amazing story. He said, "Let me tell you, I grew up in a Hasidic home, in a religious home before the Holocaust. All my family members," he said, "were murdered by the Germans." He said, "I survived this war physically, but my soul was burned in the death camps. And after the war, when I came to America, very broken, I couldn't understand, how could one person live a normal life after that? And he couldn't comprehend, how could Jews continue to observe the Torah and the commandments and have a relationship with God? He was determined to leave behind any trace of his Jewish past. At first, he lived in Miami, but there was some Jewish life there. He said, that's too much for me. And he moved near this small town in Daytona, where he was sure he would not have to see any Jewish people. He can forget about his past. He married out of the faith. He had 3 children, and one of these children were the attendant who filled his gas tank. Years passed, and one night he couldn't fall asleep, and he was flipping through the channels on TV. And one of the cable channels, he saw an elderly rabbi speaking enthusiastically in Yiddish. He was astonished. He hadn't heard that language for decades, since he was a child, and on the screen there was a subtitle translating what the Hasidic gathering, and the rabbi was speaking in Brooklyn, New York. So this elderly man is telling the young rabbis, "I became curious. It reminded me of the language I spoke at home as a child, and I heard the rabbis say that the prophets promise that no one is going to be left behind, and the Holy One, blessed be He, will gather every Jewish man and woman and bring them to the redemption. It doesn't matter how one looks and what their life looks like. No one will be abandoned. No Jew will be lost." And he felt that the rabbi was talking to him directly and saying, "You on the other side of that TV, you're from the Jewish people. You were a child and remained part of the Jewish people." In the morning, the old man is telling the young rabbis, "I took my family and I told them, listen, I come from a Jewish family. And the Rebbe promised on the screen that one day they're going to come for me to tell me here I'm Jewish." And the old man is saying, "Therefore, when you came here," he concluded excitedly, "my son came and said, 'Dad, they came here for you,' just as the Rebbe promised on the screen." Friends, that was the Rebbe's aspiration, that we all experience a personal exodus Each one of us in our own personal life has that exile, and darkness. But God can and God will split the sea for each of us. And that comes with our strength and faith and connection to the Almighty. Because the Rebbe taught us that obstacles are not interruptions to the journey. They are the journey. Keep marching towards the promised land, friends. Every challenge along the way will give you deeper insight and renewed power. Just have faith. And yes, God will split your sea too. Amen.